Welcome, everybody. This is Avoiding the Addiction Affliction brought to you by Westwards Consulting and the Kenosha County Substance Use Disorder Coalition. I'm Mike McGowan. What happens when your talents, passion, and work collide head on with a substance use disorder? Well, that's a situation our guest faced a couple of years ago. Jordan Davis is the Director of Operations for the Bloomington, Indiana ice cream shop, The Chocolate Mousse, and host of the podcast No Dishes. Welcome, Jordan.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me, Mike.
I started giggling because I wanted to drop in and say, and it's also partially sponsored by the chocolate mousse, which would fit today, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, let's start there before we get off onto what happened to you. Talk a little bit about the chocolate mousse. Man, I was reading about it. There's quite a history there.
Yeah. So, I got very fortunate. I came on about 10 and a half years ago, and you can see behind me this little drawing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. It was just this small little A-frame stand in the middle of a parking lot. And that stand, had been there since 55. Got torn down, I think, in 2017. But we've been on this plot of land since 1933. So, quite a bit of history. It was called the Penguin. It was Maze Cafe, then the Penguin. And then since 83, we've been the Chocolate Mousse. Right around that time, Michael Jordan was in Bloomington for the Olympic trials with Bob Knight at Assembly Hall. Sports Illustrated did a profile on him and said, twice in their profile with Michael Jordan, it said his favorite place in Bloomington was the Chocolate
Oh,
Mousse.
that can't
Um,
hurt.
yeah, no, exactly. And then our other little bit of lore we have is from Jack and Diane when he says, sucking on a chili dog outside the Tasty Freeze. In the music video, it's actually at our stand. So Mellencamp still lives here in Bloomington, comes around all the time. And so should have the world's most famous chili dog from that alone.
That is great. I did not read that. That was great.
So yeah,
Well,
we've expanded to a couple locations in my 10 years and really have grown the business quite a bit. We started one of the first weekly food truck events. It's called Bloomington Food Truck Friday.
yeah.
Runs every Friday, April through the end of October. It draws 1,000 or 2,000 people every week, and yeah, it's just been really great to grow the business and come on with a brand that means so much to so many people. And just try not to screw it up. In my first couple weeks working, I had a couple come by and they're like, "Hey, this is our 50th anniversary." So that's incredible. And they said our first date was here. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, that's crazy. So it means a lot. The chocolate mousse means a lot to a lot of people here in Bloomington. So I just try to do right by them.
Well, and when you're in a college town, that's where people cut their teeth too. So I would imagine almost every football, basketball game, they come back and you try to do something to that place and they're going to be mad.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was a PR nightmare when, the May family who had this land since 33, when Doran May, who, built the stand with his father, and when he decided to sell the property, and he's still alive and well here in town, but he's retired and he's up there in years, and he wanted to set up his family, for, generations potentially. And so he decided to sell the land to developers, and I had to do all the media to be like, hey, like, this wasn't our decision.
Yeah.
We're gonna try to make the most out of it. And hey, if it was anyone's decision to make, it's this guy's, it's
Yeah.
his family. So who are we to say that he shouldn't be able to set up his family in the long run? So we've made the most out of it. Now we have indoor seating and bathrooms. We still have a walk-up window, and all of the canvases in our dining room pay homage to our history. So we don't want it to be forgotten or lost. But yeah, it was really, really tough when that stand had to come down. And now we're in, the classic, 4-story retail on the first floor, top 3 are apartments that you see in a lot of places.
Sure. Well, and you also, I should mention this before I forget to do it. You also host a podcast yourself called No Dishes about culinary gems in Bloomington, right?
Yeah, so we started that. It sounds like I know you said you've been going before we recorded for 4 years. We've been going for about a little over 4 years. We started
Awesome.
in the middle of the pandemic. I've worked in
Yep.
restaurants my whole life, and originally the idea was to get people coming off of work and be like, here's a shot and a beer. How was work? And we very quickly realized that was just going to be a lot of complaining. So we pivoted from that. So we did 3 audio only seasons in my apartment, and this is before I went sober. So a lot of those old episodes that we still have up on Spotify, we were cursing quite a bit and drinking and imbibing, and then I went to rehab, and we'll dive into all that. But we ended up, just got a new producer. The old producer was tired of my shit, and I don't blame him, at the time. And so new guy came on. We started doing video and really kind of took it much more seriously. And so now we're, on Tuesday, on the 31st, our last episode of season 7 will come out. We'll have done 48 episodes this week. I think
Wow.
we're at 140 total, or I'm sorry, this year, and then about 140 total audio video. And we'll do seasons 8 and 9, which will be 40 total more episodes next year.
Well, let's get into your stuff. Like a lot of people who, drink or whatever. At what point did you go, oh, this is starting to become an issue?
Oh man, I mean it's tough. So in the industry, so before I was with Chocolate Moose, I was serving and bartending and curating cocktail lists and wine lists and doing all that fun stuff, going to wine tastings. It was part of the job.
Yep.
Um, and so it was just I never. It's my I obviously reflect quite a bit, and I'm torn because in what I've come to is I don't really think. I mean, I abused alcohol 100%, but I don't think I was really ever got to the point of being an alcoholic. The problem was when came into the picture, and that's when as soon as you do one line of cocaine, you turn into an addict right away. So it was. I have no desire to do cocaine sober. So the really nice part is that now I just avoid alcohol, and I have no desire to do cocaine. It's not really super hard for me to avoid alcohol because that wasn't what the real issue was with. Again, I definitely abused it, as many people in the industry do, and have some very regrettable nights from drinking. And I had a DUI back in 2013 when I was 23. That wasn't enough to be my wake up call. Everyone has their own point that they reach. And so I had started to dabble with cocaine here and there back, when I was 22, 23, and it was very sparingly, and then as with a lot of things, it's all about accessibility. I started to get to the point where it was around me all the time and really easy to get my hands on, which is really problematic, And so, yeah, I mean, I went years where I would do it a little bit here or there and maybe, stay up for a day or two, doing it and drinking to stay leveled out so you're not tweaking. And it just got to the point, where there was a few different times. There was one time, where 5 years ago where I took 6 months off of and I never did coke and it was fine, and then you just slowly kind of get back into it. And as I mentioned in the article that you read, which kind of led us here, I would do it maybe once a month. I'd get drunk and someone have it. And the next thing you know, I'm in my apartment and more people, I'd text people and they'd bring me some by. And, I'd be in denial about how much I would do. So I never did the bulk discount. I was always just getting one little gram at a time, because I'm like, oh, I'm just going to do this. I'll be done. Next thing you know, that same person's come over 3 or 4 times because you're just caught in that loop. And then, so it would get to the point, where I was maybe every other month would miss a day of work because I kind of just stayed up from the night before and I just didn't want to stop. And I just kept going and going. And I would text or call or try to get whatever need covered, get covered. And, in my mind, I'm like, I'm pulling it off. And then, I talked to my boss and my coworker, and they're like, hey, you're not really pulling it off. Like you're stressing us out like crazy, dude. Like you need to get your shit together. I don't know. Am I allowed to curse on here?
Oh yeah,
Uh,
but and you BS'd him, right? You're
yeah,
like,
yeah,
"No,
yeah.
I
Well,
got this, I got this."
yeah, when you're just like, okay, what I was doing the work hard, play hard. I was working
Yeah,
70
yeah.
hour weeks. I've always been a kind of a grinder from a work standpoint. I dropped out of college and have worked my way up in the industry, which is always what I aim to do. And I just, work my ass off and work a lot of hours. And then that led to me justifying the partying. So I never, I wasn't drinking at work. I wasn't doing coke here at work. I would just go out one night, start it, and then just keep going all the way through the next day, and then come in just hungover 2 days later. And I just kind of kept getting away with it, and it started becoming more and more frequent. And I was just really not happy with my life. I mean, I gotten up to 320 pounds, and most people think like, oh, you're doing coke, like you're skinny. Those are people that are like doing little bits throughout the day, all day, every day. That's not what I was doing. I'd like to eat. I've got a podcast about eating,
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
so, and again, it's just everyone's problems are different, and what triggers them are different. And so, it was just one of those things where I got to the point where I got over the years. I've been here 10 years. There was 2 or 3 times I'd kind of gotten admonished or suffered some discipline of one sort or the other, and got my shit together for a while and was fine. And then it just kind of came to this last time in 2022 and I just went out for a steak dinner with friends one night. And we had a great time. Then we go out to do karaoke and someone has Coke and I do some. And next thing I know, I end up doing it for over a week straight.
Wow.
And I was just trying to burn it all down. I was tired. I was trying to get myself fired. I was convinced that I needed to move to a different city. I was so unhappy. And all I could think to do was just, okay, let's just burn it all down. At that point, my back will be up against the wall and I'll have no choice but to do it right. And I was waiting for one of my friends to come knock on my door and like pull, and no one did. No one did. They were texting me, they were calling me, but they were like, "You're gonna figure this shit out. We're gonna let you kind of do it to yourself." And then after a solid, it ended up being a solid like 10 days had passed, and I got a hold of our owner who I had been in contact with. One day he would be really laying into me hard about what a piece of shit I was being, which I deserved, and then the next day he was being sympathetic and like, "Hey, what's going on?" And it was just kind of back and forth on, "Hey, pull your head out of your ass," and also, "Hey, man, I'm genuinely worried about you. Like, what
Mhm.
is going on?" So he came and picked me up and took me over to a local rehab facility. Put the 6 grand for the 10-day detox on his credit
He
card.
he did?
Yeah. Yep. I know. I can't begin to tell you enough how grateful I am for this man. He's helped me in so many ways. But yeah, I go and do the detox for 5 days, and then they move you over to the apartments where you have some
Yeah.
roommates, you start doing classes and all that. And at the end of 10 days, they wanted me to sign all these papers saying I was going to do IOP and I was going to do this and that, and I wasn't willing to do that. I was just like, you know what? I'm in my mind, I've hit my rock bottom. I'm going to be good from here. I know what I need to do from here. And so I didn't sign any other stuff. I kind of had to raise hell. I was fortunate actually that I didn't have health insurance at the time because otherwise it would have kept me.
Yeah.
But because of me being like, no, I'm not going to pay you, they weren't willing to keep me. So I was able to kind of get out after 10 days. And I started meeting with a therapist once a week, which I actually had met with him once right before I went off the deep end for that last bender. And that was part of the reason where I'm like, oh, I can go party. I'm making steps. I met with a therapist, so silly. So silly. I met with a therapist. Like I'm doing the right. I could party a little bit tonight. So I start meeting with him weekly, and I start going to one meeting a week. It was called Dharma Recovery. It uses like Buddhist principles. It's an hour a week. I was actually at the rehab facility. And because back when I had my DUI in 2013, I had some court ordered AA classes. AA wasn't for me. I wasn't, I know a lot of people that's been very great for it, and it just wasn't for me. And so I didn't really want to go back to try that. So I did the once a week with my therapist, once a week with the Dharma Recovery, where about 30 minutes of that hour was meditation, which I really enjoyed.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, just time went on and I started meeting with the therapist less, going to the meeting less. And so I've been, as of August 1st, was 2 years sober with, no alcohol, no cocaine, no hard drugs. And so I'm coming up on, yeah, 2.5 years. And
Outstanding.
I don't go to any meetings anymore. I DJ, so I'm in the bars. I call bingo. I'm in the bars multiple times a week. And I'm very fortunate because everyone has their own struggles. So I'm very fortunate that I'm still able to do a lot of the things that I love to do, and it's not prohibitive to my sobriety, in the long term.
Well, I always ask this somebody like that because you cannot not be around this stuff.
Right.
So that had to be just a little nerve-wracking DJing and being around bars and thinking, can I do this? So no cravings. What do you do if you find your mind wandering a little bit?
So what I found in the past, it's all just like that hard line. As long as you don't leave yourself wiggle room, for me, I've been fine. As long like to me, it's like I just don't drink now, and that's just what I do, and it's just a non-starter. I got out of rehab on a Tuesday. That Thursday, I went and did my Thursday night bingo in a college bar with 200 college kids. I used to usually get drunk right along with them while I was calling bingo, making jokes, but part of it was the anxiety, being in my early 30s at the time with 200 college kids on a microphone for an hour and a half. No matter how many times you do it, you're going to have some anxiety.
Sure.
And so I used to drink along with them, but I went out against my therapist's advice. And he's like, you shouldn't go into a bar 2 days after getting out of rehab. But I felt pretty confident again, where like no one knows me like I know me. I know that I reached my rock bottom. I feel very convicted that I'm going to be fine. And I went in and I was more loose on the mic than I had ever been.
Hmm.
I was having more fun than I had ever had. And that was huge for me because over the following, next coming months, the first few months of sobriety, I would go out with friends and realize that all the times that I went out and had a good time wasn't because of the alcohol. It's because I was in a good mood and, had energy. All the times I went out and didn't have a good time wasn't because I drank a certain kind of alcohol. It's because I was tired and I wasn't in a good mood. So like, if I can still go out and have a good time, and it's all about, am I in a good mood or like have a good time? If I'm just in a good mood and have energy. So it was never really the alcohol that made those good memories that you look back on. It was just the people you were with and the mindset that you were in. And so that was huge for me. And that builds, it builds and builds. The more you go out and have a good time. And again, it's not for everybody. Not everybody should go out if in their sobriety journey. But I've been again very fortunate that I've been able to. And it's but yeah, that first night, just getting on that microphone and realizing like, oh, I don't need that shit. Like I can do this without the alcohol and still have just as much fun, if not more fun.
What do you do on the flip side if you're having a bad day? What do you use now as coping mechanisms to bring yourself back to even keel? Do you still meditate?
No, I don't. I should. Because I really enjoy it. I really keep myself very, very busy. I work a lot for this job. I've got about 3 side hustles. I'm on a couple boards. I try to stay really busy. And when I have a shitty day, I very quickly, I just know that drinking's not going to help anything. And for me, it's all about the streak. I don't want to ruin the streak. I've got the streak going. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I've got 2 and why would I waste that for one cocktail? You know what I mean? Like I went to Puerto Rico. I could have easily drank, and nobody would have known. But like I don't want that. I don't want to have to lie about my sobriety. I don't want to have that back in my head. Like, oh, I've been sober 2.5 years, but I did go on this vacation, got hammered a couple times, and I don't know if that would break the seal. If I went and had one cocktail on vacation, who knows? It might all be over when I come back and I'm like, and then I start dabbling again. And because it's something I've thought about. I've thought about drinking again in the future. And if I could do that in a reasonable way without it leading to cocaine or, negative impact on my life, until I'm at 100% confident that it wouldn't lead to that, I'm not going to do it. And I don't think I'll ever be 100% confident.
That is such a boy, that's a podcast in itself. I get asked that question all the time. And my answer, Jordan, is maybe, but since you don't know and it could kill you, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
Know,
and things have just gone so well for me, and that's where I'm also very lucky, very fortunate, because not everybody has that. Some people come out and they're doing sobriety, taking on sobriety for the first time, and they're 6 months into it, and some tragic stuff happens, or they lose. Like I've been very, very, very lucky for the people I have around me, for my family, for my friends, for my coworkers, to where things have just progressively gotten better over the last 2.5 years, to where I would be such a fool to try to risk losing that or like not, kind of chase that high of continued self improvement, of buying a house, of, things that I never would have thought I could have achieved 2.5 years ago.
you mentioned it earlier. I came across your stuff on an article I was reading about staying sober during the holidays, and they come up every darn year, right? The same articles, and because the presumption is, well, of course people celebrate with alcohol. Of course they celebrate with substances. Don't you find it curious that it almost like you have to make an excuse why you don't celebrate with substances?
Yeah, yeah, it's weird. I mean, it's ingrained in us in our society where that's what you do. You celebrate. And that was one of the things for me when we did that steak dinner. I can't remember what it was, but we were celebrating. I wasn't one that drank when I was down. I was one that drank when I was up because I'm just like, yeah, like I'm feeling like I would need a reward. It was a reward system. And you mentioned earlier, and I meant to touch on it. I still do have cravings, even though that wasn't necessarily
Hmm.
like, but it's more of like, man, I'd love to just taste that again. Or like I'll
Yeah.
smell my friend's beer and it's just like that's the part I do miss is just that being able to have a nice like taste a nice Pinot Noir or something like that. It's not so much the feeling of getting drunk, it's the like just the taste of a nice, well put together cocktail or something like that. And that's why, I have those thoughts about in the future. But again, like I said, until you're 100% sure, which you never will be, it's not going to be worth the risk.
Yeah, I think a hard line, I think that's such great advice. The hard line is so important. I worked with a woman a long time ago who deviated from her hard line with one Miller Sharps, a non-alcoholic, low alcoholic beer. And before long, everything went to boom. But that's, moving off the line.
It's a slippery slope. Yeah, it's just because I've talked with quite a few friends over the last couple of years that they're like, "Hey, I've thought about stop drinking this or that." I'm just like, it's just a hard. It has to be a hard line. The second you give yourself any wiggle room, you're screwed.
Well, what do you do? Speaking of friends, you work in an industry, right? You have tons of friends who still use. What did you say to those people who were using Coke, especially selling to you? Uh, how did you form a hard line with those relationships, or were they respectful?
Very respectful. Again, one of those things that I've just been very blessed and fortunate is surrounded by understanding people. Even my old Coke dealer, I'll see him out and he's genuinely happy for me, because he came by, he dropped off that last bag on that 10-day bender and was just like, dude, what, are you okay? You know what I mean? Like, he still gave it to me, but was genuinely just like, what is going on, man? Like, you haven't left your apartment, And yeah, it is weird. I still see him out and about, and I see other people that I've partied with over the years. And again, and I've been around a few times now where yeah, there's been coke out, and I see it, and that's weird. It is very weird. The weirdest part for me is it's been over 2.5 years since I've done it, and I don't really think about it in my day to day because again, I'm just busy and I don't really want to do it unless I have that drunk buzz where that's when it sounds like a good idea. But I still have dreams. I still have dreams about it. And it's
Yeah,
crazy. Like I
yeah.
haven't waited tables in over 10 years and I still have dreams about waiting tables. And I will wake up and I'll feel like I screwed it all up. And it'll take me a good 5 minutes to be like, whoa, that was just a dream. You didn't actually screw up. But yeah, I still have dreams of getting drunk and doing coke. And I'm just like, when is that going to stop? I thought for
I,
sure by now I'd be past it.
I don't know. It was probably 15 years after my mom quit smoking. And she was at my house. And one night, middle of the night, I hear her hand pounding on the nightstand. And I know she's looking for a cigarette. And I
Oh
burst out
yeah.
laughing. I burst out laughing. And from the other room, I said, "Hey, Ma, you quit." And she said, "Oh, shut up." And went back to sleep. And she said she was dreaming. It's not unusual. You're not the first, nor will you be the last person who says
No,
they dream about it. It
it
just is
sucks
there.
though. I mean, you
Yeah.
carry that. I said 5 minutes, but I mean, you carry that for the good, easily the first part of your day, just internally in your body of just
Yeah.
that stress where you're just like, something's wrong, but I don't know what it was. And then it's like, oh, well, it's just this thing that wasn't reality. But yeah, it's wild.
Well, and speaking of celebrating, I'll let you go with this. I've been dying to ask this, right? So the chocolate mousse. Well, one, next time I come to Bloomington, I'm stopping there, right?
Yeah,
Do
absolutely.
you,
On
do
my
you,
tree. Yeah.
do you have a flavor that celebrates sobriety? And if not, why not?
That's a great call. I don't know. We don't. We don't. I've never honestly thought about doing it. So
You
maybe
will
that's
now.
something
You
I
will
was going
now.
to say. I've got the rest of our management team and our owner who walked in a few minutes ago, who's the guy that I owe so much to. I will bring that up. I think that would be a good thing to promote. There's a lot of really great organizations here in Bloomington.
Oh,
We have
yeah.
Bloomington's got a ton of substance abuse issues that are very heavy for a lot of people and a lot of great organizations here. So we definitely could partner with one of them to try to promote the work that they're doing.
Oh, it'd be great. Bill W.'s favorite. Just call it that and call it a
Yeah, there
day,
we
right?
go. Mike, am I allowed to ask you just very
Yeah.
briefly about your story?
Sure. Well, I grew up around it. And so I made the opposite decision. When it was offered to me, I said, I don't want any part of this because I don't want to end up like the people that I lived with,
Right.
which is, and what I found through my career, I've worked with it. I wanted to stay away from it. I started in education and then went to work in counseling. And you know what? No matter what you work with, if you work with people, you end up working with substance abuse. You just do. Whether you're a therapist, whether you're a counselor, whether you're a minister, whether you're a nurse, whether you're a doctor, a business owner, you're going to work with it and you better know how to handle it. So finally, I just gave into it, ran a couple of treatment centers, and then they went under. We don't have the same world that we did because insurance doesn't pay for a lot of stuff anymore.
Huh.
And so I started doing prevention work instead. And this is just part of that. And this has been the most delightful, probably the last chapter in my career is doing something like this. I still speak to tens of groups and I love hearing the stories, Jordan. They're just outstanding.
I love it. Well, yeah, I mean, that's my favorite part of doing my podcast is just the people. And just like hearing their stories. It's a different focus and we're focused on the restaurant industry but yeah, it's just I've had people that I've known for years and I get to know so much more about them when
Yep.
they come on the podcast. So it's really enjoyable. But yeah, I'm so glad you reached out and I get to share my story. And if anyone ever wants to reach out to me about anything, I'm happy to pass along my contact info and
Ooh,
help in any way that I can.
perfect. People who listen all the time know this, but we will put the links to both the no dishes and to the chocolate mousse and your contact information on the blurb to the podcast. And for
Great.
those of you who are traveling through Bloomington, just stop in. The menu looks unbelievable. And the ice cream looks unbelievable too. And that's from somebody who comes from the dairy state. So there you go.
I appreciate it. Yeah, that's the stamp of approval that I'm proud to wear. I will say, in my first 2 years working here, I put on 80 pounds. So
I didn't even want to go there.
they say don't trust a skinny chef. If a skinny guy's selling the ice cream, you don't want it.
That is great. Well, thanks, Jordan. Jordan's story about finding new life happens all the time. For those of you listening and watching, I hope you find life and support as Jordan did wherever you are. And for his boss, there's something magical that happens. Somebody like that, he will now, for the rest of his life, walk through a wall for that guy, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
For those of you listening, thanks for listening. Be safe and go get a cone.
Thanks, Mike.